Number 6 on my fantasy playlist. Laid back record. Nice keyboard play in this record too. Very sublime. 101. 101 rather, by Hall & Oates at number 6 on my fantasy playlist. March 18th, 1983. John Oates has got a brand new book out. Well, it's not brand new. It's been out for several months, but I'm going to make a point to read that book, John Oates of Hall & Oates. It looks like a pretty good book. Glanced at it a couple of times, but got Hall & Oates here at number 6. 101. Daryl Hall sometimes collaborated with John Oates and wrote some stuff, wrote some songs, but it looks like a couple of women helped out a lot on the songwriting. Sarah Allen and her sister Jana Allen. Sarah Allen co-wrote Private Eyes. Sarah and Jana Allen co-wrote Private Eyes. Sarah Allen co-wrote Man Eater. And Jana Allen, she co-wrote Kiss on My List. Massive comeback hit for Hall & Oates in 1981, although before that they did cover You Lost That Lovin' Feeling, which made top 10 or top 20 in late 1980. And How Does It Feel to Be Back, I believe, was another one they did in 1980 that started the spin up into the 80s, making their comeback in the 80s to Hall & Oates. And Jana Allen co-wrote Did It in a Minute. Remember that song, Did It in a Minute? Hall & Oates back in the spring of 1982, and she co-wrote Method of Modern Love. That was a nice record by Hall & Oates. One of my favorite records by Hall & Oates. Some Things Are Better Left Unsaid. God, atmospheric record. It's different. It's not your typical first chorus. It's just, well, spring of '85. Fell in love with that record. Sounded good on those FM radio stations down in Montgomery when I visited there with some friends back in the spring of '85. WHHY FM in Montgomery. But God, that's so strange how these memories come back. About 33 years ago on that one. But let's go back on Hall & Oates on this record. Daryl Hall pretty much wrote this record. It's about being on the road. And when you're on the road, you live a transient life. You're going from hotel to hotel, from city to city. I mean, you're a rock star. You're a pop star. You're on tour all the time. And when you're on tour all the time, you're everywhere, and yet you're nowhere. You don't really have any roots. There's no domestic life per se. And home, the idea of home, takes on a special meaning. And this song is sort of about that. 101, Hall & Oates. This is how they met. Did a little research on how they met. I mentioned this before in another video. Might have mentioned it a couple of times. Guess it's one of my favorite stories to tell. Hall & Oates, they met in 1967. They're from Philadelphia, from Pennsylvania. They were attending Temple University. There was sort of a battle of the bands. A radio station had sponsored a record hop at this venue, and bands were playing there. John Oates was in one band. Daryl Hall was in another band. There's a couple of other acts. I'll mention them in just a minute. And what happened? Well, a fight broke out. A gang fight. One account, a gang fight broke out at this venue. And people, they made to the nearest exit. Let's get the hell out of Dodge. And John, and you're not going to believe this, Daryl Hall and John Oates, they fled, and they fled into the same elevator. They met in the service elevator. They started talking, and they found out they shared a love of music. And so the other acts who played that night at that venue, I just found this out. Howard Tate. Now, you might not have heard of Howard Tate. He was sort of a minor R&B soul artist back in the 60s. He had some Hot 100 entries. He had some pretty good tunes out. Added a couple of his songs recently on my Spotify playlist. And the other act who played that night, well, who was slated to play that night at this venue, Five Stairsteps. Best known for Ooh Child in the summer of 1970, but Five Stairsteps had a number of R&B hits in the late 60s. A lot of people have forgotten about. One of them was called Danger. She's a Stranger. That was in 1967, and 1966, 67, and there was Baby You Make Me Feel So Good, 1968. Five Stair Steps, top 20 soul hits. They were knocking it out on R&B charts before they had their big crossover, Ooh Child. And did you know, for your record buffs out there, Five Stair Steps also covered the Beatles' Dear Prudence. Spring of 1970 went to number 66. Wrote down the chart positions. It's something like number 66 on Billboard's Hot 100. Yes. Well, these groups, Howard Tate and Five Stair Steps, also played that night at this venue that got broken up by this gang fight. So that's how Hall & Oates met. Sarah Allen, who co-wrote many of their hits, she had a relationship with Daryl Hall for a number of years, 30 years. Very fruitful relationship. Hall & Oates, 101 at number 6, down from number 5 on my fantasy playlist, March 18th, 1983.